Hi, I'm Joe at Roll Call. Here we're going to give a quick crash course on how to shoot accurately. There's 7 fundamentals of marksmanship, starting with your stance, your proper grip, your sight alignment, your sight picture, your trigger control, your breathing, and your follow through. I'm going to go really quick through this and do a quick breakdown. Stance is an athletic stance. If you're just shooting one shot at a time, it doesn't matter. You can stand however you want. You can sit on a chair and still shoot accurately. A proper stance is going to allow you to eventually move and shoot multiple rounds accurately. So why not start the proper stance right away? A good athletic stance, take the weight off your heels. That's going to be your stance. Weight off your heels and body leaning forward, just like I compare it to skiing. Nobody skis like this. It's all about your balance. It's about controlling and managing recoil. So a proper stance will allow you to do that, and with the proper stance, it'll allow you to advance on your target from this position. Second thing we go into is our grip, a proper grip. Weapon is clear. This is the back strap. You have the web of your hand high up on the back strap. Thumbs forward, this archway here and this bend here in your hand, your palm. Just marry them together. You're going to wrap that around like that. You're going to have all your fingers and everything pointing forward. This will give you the best control over the weapon. 60% of your grip comes from your support hand or your non-dominant hand. 40% of your grip comes from your dominant hand. And the reason why that we're going to have most of our grip from our support hand is because this needs to stay a little bit more relaxed for the trigger control. So a proper grip, having a little bit of pressure on the side of the gun will not hurt it whatsoever. You will not hurt your fingers. Just definitely avoid this kind of action here because that will lead to maybe some stitches. Next thing you're going to be looking for is your sight alignment. It's going to be hard to show you sight alignment on this, but what I like to do when I'm training is when somebody's looking through the sights, I would take that and ask them if they could still see their front sight. If they could see their front sight, that means their gun is level. If they can no longer see their front sight, what usually tends to happen is they're aiming up like that. They can see their front sight now, but when you do that, they can't. So that keeps the gun nice and level. Every sighting system is a little bit different. For a Glock, you have the U in the back, the ball in the front, you put the ball on top of the U. Sight alignment, now your sight picture. What does your sights look like in contrast with your target? Front sight is key. In the world of shooting, you have hard focus and soft focus. This is especially important when you are trying to shoot further distance, like 25 yards. You could see your rear sight, your front sight, and your target, but you could only look at one crystal clear at a time. Hard focus and soft focus. Many times I ask, what is supposed to be your hard focus? And a lot of times I hear people say the target, which is not correct. We're not talking combat shooting here now. We're just talking target shooting. The difference between combat shooting and target shooting is combat shooting, you're going to have 2 eyes open. Combat shooting is point and shoot where you're hardly even using your sights, just as a guide. So in the target shooting world, to shoot a nice tight group, let's say 25 yards away, your front sight should be crystal clear. Your target should be almost a blur. Put that crystal clear front sight in the middle of the blur 25 yards away. And then that leads us to our trigger control. With the proper trigger control, a nice steady press, and this is what happens. Out of the 7 fundamentals of marksmanship, the number one mistake is the trigger control. Again, it's clear. What tends to happen is they would slap the trigger, they would bounce off the trigger, they put pressure on the trigger this way, not realizing it. It has to be a conscious thought of a steady press right back towards your nose with that trigger control. Anybody that ever played any kind of instruments, piano or guitar, understands the importance of how sensitive the keys are or the strings are. You have to be on point with them. You can't just slap the bass. You can't just slam on the piano with your fingers. Otherwise, it's just not going to work for you. The sound ain't going to work. It's very similar to a trigger. A trigger needs to be pressed directly back towards your nose at a steady, even pace. When the gun goes off, the action's going to recycle. You are bringing it back out. Click. And then back again. That's pretty much your follow-up. The end of shot number 1 is the beginning of shot number 2, like linking music notes together. The gun goes bang, you hold it, you start resetting. That reset part, that is the beginning of shot number 2. Breathing is something that no matter how much I'd say to a new shooter, you got to breathe, they say, well, no kidding. Of course I'm going to breathe. I mean, that's what I do. But when I have them shooting multiple shots at a slow, methodical pace, what tends to happen is they hold their breath and then they start doing the shakes. Breathing will help you calm yourself down and steady. If you have 12 rounds in your magazine and you're on, let's say, shot number 5, and you start getting this going on, and of course I'm exaggerating it, finger off the trigger, keep the weapon pointed in a safe direction, break the elbows, bring it in, regroup. So a big deep breath in, then exhaust. Let the breath out until there's about 20% oxygen left in your lungs. That's when you're going to be at your calmest and most relaxed, ready for that trigger pull. The last two, breathing should have been right before trigger pull and follow through, but I just kind of skipped around there a little bit. So again, you have 7 fundamentals of marksmanship. You have your stance, you have your grip, you have your sight alignment, your sight picture, your breathing, your trigger control, and your follow through. All of these are great. You could master all of them. There's nothing else to tell you except one thing. The one thing that nobody tells you about the trigger control, or excuse me, the 7 fundamentals, you could be doing everything correct until you have a flinch. What is a flinch or an anticipation? Right before I'm ready to shoot, I bounce, okay? For that, we'll do like a ball and dummy drill, which really helps. It's natural for a human to have some sort of flinch because it's unnatural for an explosion to go off 3 feet in front of your face and a loud noise. If you're a new shooter, I always recommend doubling up on your hearing protection because it's usually that loud bang that helps startle you. And your mind could actually see a flash. It might not register, but your body's going into almost that fight or flight mode. So you tend to anticipate that shot. So when you're up, everything could be perfect. Your stance, your grip, your sight alignment, your sight picture, your breathing, your trigger control could be perfect right until that last very moment when you have to let that round go and you'd start dipping. So a lot of times right-handers say, I shoot low and to the left. Usually what that is a little bit too aggressive with the trigger, and the low part, which nobody wants to admit because it almost has a negative connotation like it's less than macho, that you're jumping or you're flinching. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that you're a human and there's an explosion going off 3 feet in front of your face. So although many people don't think that they're anticipating the shot or flinching, the fact of the matter is if you're hitting low, you probably are. If you're hitting to the left, you probably are too aggressive with your trigger. Ease up on this hand, tighten up on this hand a little bit more. Remember, 40, 60, and think about pulling that trigger right back to your nose, and that should help your shooting tremendously. And what also works very good is if you have, let's say, a coach-pupil thing. If you have somebody that's also interested in shooting very well, coach each other, because there's things that I do when I'm shooting that I can't notice that maybe you would notice, and you could help correct me on that. So there's your 7 fundamentals, guys. Give it a shot and see how you make out. You can always visit us online at www.rollcall911.com. We're located here in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and thanks for watching.